welcome to my show once again. I know a few episodes back I talked about creating forward momentum, and then I didn't. I had some stuff come up in my life, and I've been spending my prime filming time every weekend dealing with that stuff. But that's resolved, that's behind me, and as we're filming this, the pandemic is showing signs of ending because of widespread vaccinations. Maybe soon the world will spin again, and you, true believer, might be able to put a helmet on and go and fight. Which is why today we're going to talk about helmets. Your helmet is going to be, most likely, the most expensive part of your kit. It's also the thing that's most likely to be extensively and across time borrowed. Because a lot of new fighters are fighting in borrowed gear. And a lot of intermediate fighters are still fighting in borrowed helmets because they're expensive. And it takes a long time to formulate the opinions of what you really want. Which is why a little bit later in this video, we're going to do something weird. For my shows, we're going to actually not be like 15, 20 feet apart from each other, and I'm going to show you things in my hands. One of the few good things that came out of the pandemic, though, and it's related to helmets, is the ubiquity of the neck gaiter things that you can get everywhere. These things are amazing for us helmet-wearing chucklefucks. I'm going to have to edit that out, because I'm not going to keep chucklefuck in my show. These head wraps are amazing for us helmet-wearing fighters, because I don't know if you know this, but your head produces head gunk. Your helmet will absorb that gunk, and it's often a pain to clean. So it's much better to have a barrier. Yes, a head condom between you and your helmet, because it makes it so much easier to just drop one of these in the laundry than try to take your padding out and try to wash or replace your padding. Some of the padding options are just not removable conveniently or not washable. And your armor kit's going to stink no matter what you do because you're sweating in it. But quality of life, the less your armor kit stinks, the happier you're going to be. The first helmet I'm going to talk about in detail today is this monstrosity. Made by, I have no idea. Passed through the hands of many until they came to me. Oddly enough, I got this helmet long before I joined the SCA from a buddy of mine who had quit the SCA and knew I liked medieval armor and said, "Here, put this up on your bookshelf." And then like 5 or 6 years later, I found the SCA and started fighting in this monstrosity. So, important thing to look at when you're borrowing a helmet, make sure it's actually legal. And I say that because the original padding on this helmet, I was told by the former fighter who gave it to me, that it was good and solid and legal, and it wasn't. I don't know if it was rules changed, he never cared to, I have no clue. But my first few months of fighting, I fought in a helmet that wasn't safe. And luckily, I didn't get injured. This is your brain you're talking about. I don't know about you, but I like my brain. So if you're going to borrow a helmet, don't take somebody's word that the padding is right and legal. Actually examine it. One of the things that was wrong with this is this section right here was padded out with upholstery foam, open cell foam. It is too squishy, there's no spring back. Don't have it in there. You can use closed cell foam. This particular closed cell foam that was part of the padding in this, number one, it's too thin. Number two, I'm not getting much spring back on this foam anymore. It's pretty shot. It's a little too old. It's not doing what it needs to do. I'm personally a huge fan of the military ACH, MICH, combat helm pads. They're 2/3 of an inch thick. They're Velcro-y, fuzzy on the back, so you put the Velcro scratchy in the helmet. You can put them in there, you can pull them out, you can configure it to fit you. Most medieval helmets require at least 2 sets of the pads in order to pad them out. There is one thing to be aware of when it comes to these pads, is there's a couple of companies that sell what on the outside look exactly the same, but the inside is open cell kitchen sponge kind of foam that's being sold for cosplayers and airsoft guys that don't need the protection, they just need the fitment for helmets. Don't get that stuff. Get the real stuff, get the stuff that's to the military specs. And if you're going to use ACH, MICH padding, and if you're wondering what the difference is, Advanced Combat Helmet and I'm not entirely sure what the MI stands for, I think it's Military Combat Helmet. The only difference between those pads is their shapes, because it's for the full-size helmet and then the helmet that's got the cutouts over the ears so they can put their comms in there. That's the difference between the two padding sets. And when it comes to padding the helmets out, you kind of have a few options. Obviously, I'm a big fan of the ACH style padding. This helmet's not in current use, which is why the padding is a little screwy. And the advantages of this style of padding out is, as I said, it's very configurable. You can remove it to wash it. When this was being actively used, we used the looped duct tape instead of Velcro to secure it, and then you could pull it back out until the Velcro until the duct tape just died on being sticky. The other main methods are a historical style suspension rig, which the only real complaints I've ever heard about the historical style suspension rig is that it kind of works a little too well, in that some fighters that have those historical suspension rigs, the helmet will move so much when it's hit to absorb the blow, and they don't know they got hit. Which honestly I think would be a great problem to have, because I want to be safe. The other thing you can do is you can basically replicate this with not blasted out new closed cell foam. When doing the closed cell foam, a lot of kingdoms and principalities and regions are banning what they refer to as blue camp foam. There are some camping products that are made out of a blue foam. There's 2 different grades of this foam. One's kind of got this shininess, and it doesn't quite look like closed cell foam. It looks more like styrofoam. But the reason those 2 are being banned in some areas is they don't spring back the same way. The really dense blue closed cell foam that looks like foam, like EVA foam, like floor mat foam, all these foams, after a few squishes it doesn't spring back. And the other stuff, after a couple of squishes, it doesn't spring back. And you need that spring back because it needs to deform, absorb that energy, and then come back and be able to absorb the energy of the next blow. Check your helmet frequently. This is your brain we're talking about. You want to be able to think your way through tomorrow's fight, not be concussed. As somebody who has had a concussion in this sport, don't do it, man. Don't do it. I almost forgot. There's a couple of reasons why this helmet's not in circulation. Number one is the flat top catches and directs all the force down in there. And when I was fighting with it, I had a taller fighter land a blow straight square onto that. And despite being padded outright, I really didn't like the feel of that hit. And while I don't think I was in real danger of being injured, I didn't like the feel of that hit, and I didn't want to push it. The other issue with this one is how far this prow comes down, and it conflicts with a lot of sets of armor and keeps you from looking down. So this is an uncomfortable helmet with a landing pad, and that's 2 strikes against it, and I've got another helmet to loan out. So that's why this one isn't in circulation. And one of your helmet considerations is that it works with your gear. So if you have a helmet that clanks into your breastplate and keeps you from looking down, maybe that's not a good thing. Now, this is the first helmet I bought, and we're going to talk about buying helmets for just a moment before we get into the features of this one. If you're buying a helmet from a maker, talk to people and get a good idea of what's going on, because there are a lot of good SCA makers that are bad businessmen, both accidentally bad and intentionally bad. And I bring that up because this particular helmet here was built by a guy who's kind of infamous for scamming people. I'm not going to bother giving you his name because, number one, I don't quite remember it at the moment, and number two, the only reason I bought it is because his name was not attached to the Etsy store, because I did do a little bit of research, and he got around our research. But the guy who made this helmet is infamous for setting up an SCA business, selling helmets, collecting a ton of money from orders, fulfilling a few orders, getting behind and snowballing, and I don't know if the guy's an intentional scammer or if things are just rolling past his capabilities, but what ends up happening is he'll sell a couple hundred helmets, probably realistically 50, 75, 100, and fulfill like 10 to 20 of them. And then things have snowballed. He no longer has the money to buy the steel. He doesn't have the time to get them built. And then he just disappears with the money. So I lucked out and actually got a helmet from that guy when he was running an Etsy business that got shut down by Etsy for not fulfilling orders. This is the helmet I got a concussion in. It's a good helmet. It wasn't the helmet's fault. It was mine. At the time, it was padded with multiple layers of good quality closed cell foam, kind of like what we have now in its current configuration across the back of the head and neck. The problem at the time was one of the layers shifted, and so I had a section of my head that, instead of being protected by 3 layers of closed cell foam at 1/4 inch each, equaling up to 3/4 of an inch, which is 1/4 of an inch over the bare minimum 1/2 inch. Instead, I had a big section of my head being protected by 1/4 inch layer of foam that was a little beat up. And then I took the hit that left that dent. I had a concussion. I pre-padded with ACH padding and took hits that were harder, and because it was padded right, and I could tell that it was padded right, I was okay. My biggest push on the ACH is you can look at there and go, hey, those pads are all in the right place. You can squish that pad and go, okay, it's bouncing back right, or uh-oh, I put my thumbprint in there and my thumbprint's still in there, yoink, replace. It's just easier to be safe. Any helmet that's been in the SCA for some length of time is going to have some weird modifications to it. I took a hit that bent one of those 2 bars and made a hole big enough to take a thrust to the face. So I welded the support so that way I couldn't do it again, because, as you know, metal bent once will bend again. Easier. This is actually a really good helmet, and it's on extended loan to a dear friend of mine and my camera woman. And as long as she's sweating in it, she can fight in it. It's hers until she stops fighting or she replaces it. And that's kind of a common thing with the SCA. But both I and Marshall's went over with her after she padded this out to make sure that it was safe. And while it was a safe configuration when I handed it to her and just needed to be adjusted to her fit. I told her to have, and she did, because she's smart, to have the marshal do a full breakdown on the helmet. Make sure that everything is safe. Don't take anybody's word. Oh yeah, the padding on it's safe. No, take it out and inspect it. You don't know how long that's been sitting in somebody's garage. Some of the padding will break down in time, even if you're not using it. So, protect your brain bucket. And always have a marshal look over your stuff if you haven't been using it in a long time, or you haven't been the one wearing it. Make sure that it fits you right and covers your face, your skull, your jawline. All that is protected and covered appropriately and adequately. Because again, this protects your brain. Brain's good. Incidentally, a nice feature about this specific helmet is within the rules of our sport, this is what everybody's wearing. Because everything is supposed to be calibrated off of a specific fantasy set of armor where you're wearing this style helmet with a nasal, a chainmail hauberk with boiled leather, elbows and knees. And that's what we're all, in theory, wearing, and everything's to be calibrated off of that. So the nice thing about this helmet is, if you take a hit in this helmet that would have stunned you, would have whatever, if it had been steel clanging on it, you took a hit that would have stunned you. This is the prototypical fantasy helmet for our sport, and that's kind of nice. This here is the second helmet I ever bought, and is probably going to be the helmet I'm going to fight in for my entire SCA career from here going forward, because it's gorgeous. If this helmet asks me to slow dance, I'm slow dancing with it, is what I'm trying to say. But this has been extensively reconfigured. It was originally with a bar grill. I had a sculptor sculpt that Menpo, and has a few features that I kind of want to talk about. Number one, this helmet has a faceplate that can be opened up. Now, that's really nifty and nice, but to be clear, that's not really for my convenience. It's for my consort's convenience. At longer events where I'm spending most of the day armored up, it is so that my consort can pop that open and pour water into me, or pour a snack into me, because with all honesty, once I'm gauntleted up, I can't manipulate those pins. Those pins don't even exist for me once I've got my gauntlets on. They might as well not be there as far as I can tell. We added this little flappy-do on the chin because one of my local marshals was a bit concerned about the possibility of a weapon getting underneath that faceplate and getting to my face. And so that blocks it. And this particular helmet kind of requires the gorget, because a bit of the helmet weight sits on the gorget instead of on me. I have taken hits to this helmet that I would have really not liked in any of the other helmets I've owned, and I was just fine. This thing is a heavy beast. But the thing to think about is a hit to the helmet is a hit to the helmet. It's a hit to the head, no matter how far away from you that helmet is. Which is why, despite historically there was a lot of cultures that had big old crests and things, and hell, even the samurai had the medate, the big decorative piece that's right here. There's even some samurai helmets in period that had the Viking horns that never existed on the Vikings. There's a reason why they're not on these helmets, because a hit to those is a hit to your head. And if you're going to fight in a samurai helmet, remember that a hit to the Shikoro is a hit to you, which kind of sucks because you're extending you away from you. But on the other side, there's a lot of blows that would have come into that V of my shoulder, neck, and hurt. That, I mean, yeah, my opponent still got the kill from it, but it was caught on the armor and I didn't care about it. That was kind of nice. In your fighting career, you're going to end up being known more for your helmet's look than your face and what you look like. We had, on a local level, one of my favorite stories is we had a knight, who I'm not going to name, hand down one of his helmets because he upgraded to a much more beautifully decorated helmet, handed over his helmet to somebody that's like a foot taller than him, significantly lighter than him, both in weight and skin tone. And when said unbelt showed up in said knight's former helmet, he had fighters at other on opposing sides and stuff ask him what happened to his white belt, because they didn't realize that the guy had just suddenly become like a shade paler, a foot taller, because all he recognized was the helmet. So, remember, your helmet is your face in the SCA. Make it a pretty face, one that protects you and safe. Thank you for watching this slightly belated episode. Hope you enjoy, hope you find it informative, hope you found it funny. And please remember, especially in these trying times, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and soon we'll be able to kill each other, but not hurt each other.